Hi guys, so today I'm going to be doing a bit of a recommended reading for autumn time. So some of these books are just atmospheric, cozy books to read during autumn, and some of them are like more Halloween horror recommendations. Now I don't read a hell of a lot of horror, so I don't have too many hearty suggestions for that, but some of these fit that spoopy kind of atmospheric mood, so I hope you enjoy the video. I noticed my battery just has like one little battery person left, so this may be a little bit rushed and I've got quite a few books to get through, so without any further ado, let's get into this. So they're not really situated into any kind of specific order except for the last lot, which is mainly just like classics. Sorry if you can hear kids in the background, they're out in the communal garden. But let's get started. So first one I have to talk to you about is Melmoth. I've done a full review of this if you guys are interested. This is by Sarah Perry, and it has that creepy dark horror gothic tone that I feel like picks and delivers a refreshing new take on some of classic gothic literature, but with a more modern spin and, you know, a modern writer of today. This one is really cool. So we're following our protagonist called Helen Franklin, who did something in her past and she can't seem to stop it from haunting her. And we're also following this sort of dual timeline of this mysterious manuscript that keeps kind of like propping up. This manuscript is sort of filled with the darkest testimonies of humanity, and it's eating away at her and kind of like the mystery of it and trying to find out what happened. And the manuscript really follows this sort of person or creature or whatever called Melmoth, who has had some mythology in the past. I think it leads back to biblical times, like with Jesus and that. I might be wrong, but so Melmoth is this basically lonely character who calls out to those in that sort of state, but it's quite scary, and whoever goes on the path of finding the truth behind Melmoth and all these sort of mysteries has two decisions to make: whether to kind of own up to what they did that's kind of haunting and tormenting them, and I guess just live with it, or be led into the darkness to follow forever Melmoth in this dark, lonely companionship. So yeah, it does a perfect job of capturing that gothic, eerie, atmospheric tension, and yeah, it's a very enjoyable read. I'd also recommend The Rats by James Herbert. I recently just purchased the sequel. I didn't realise it was the direct sequel to this, but yeah, this one particularly is the 40th anniversary and it's very nice. So basically we're following this time where rats have kind of grown superior over humans and they're starting to eat humans, and like there's this new kind of super rat, and it's quite creepy and grisly and horrifying really. So that's just the base of it, like these alternated rats that are plaguing the city. But yeah, I remember enjoying this. Here's one that it gives you those spoopy feels, but it's not necessarily terrifying, and that is Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. I have the Southern Guide to Vampire Slaying on my ebook to read, and I would like to read more of Grady Hendrix's book, but this one was really fun because it's based in like an IKEA-esque store, and it's like it takes that spin on a haunted house kind of storytelling, but they're in an IKEA-like store, and there's these weird graffitiing and foul play basically that keeps happening to this particular shop. So a couple of the staff members stay overnight to see if they can try and catch whoever's in the act of vandalizing their equipment, but it takes this whole scary spin of like this haunted possession, and you can find out more about that. It's really fun because it's got snippets, like every chapter it will have aspects that make you think that it looks like an IKEA catalogue, like the assembling, but it gets creepier and creepier with what it actually says in it in those little sections as you go on. So this is the front and this is the back. I gave this a 3-star, but it was enjoyable. It just wasn't as intense as I wanted it to be, but some of the scary scenes really did creep me out, but yeah, this was fun. Next up, I'd suggest Lanny for you. So this isn't scary at all. This one's by Max Porter, and it's more of like a magical realism kind of story, but I feel like it does the atmosphere that you just need in autumn full time. We're following this young boy, Lanny, who has this magical kind of way with the world and with life, and he's just got such a beautiful mind and spirit. But we're also following basically the whole village, but you also learn about the village from this strange character called Dead Papa Toothwort, who's kind of like the embodied spirit of the village, and he has this particular liking to Lanny because he's so in tune with the nature and everything. And you kind of see through his eyes as the plot thickens and something happens. And yeah, it's really interesting. It's such a weird story. I kind of don't want to give you too much because it's one of those beautiful pieces where you read it and you're like, wow, this is so weird. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this one. I think it's a favourite read so far this year. Very whimsical, very fairy tale like, but combined with the hard hitting realities of living in a small village and bad things that can happen, sort of thing. Another fun one, more like light-hearted I would say, is Pumpkin Heads by Rainbow Rowell and illustrated by Faith Erin Hicks. This is a really sweet story. I think I got this and read it last year, but it's about these two friends, Deja and Josiah, who worked on this like pumpkin patch for the whole of their like holidays throughout school, but they're both going off to like college now and they probably won't see each other ever again, so they're trying to make the most of their last shift together, and it's really, really sweet. It's a lovely tale of friendship. There's a bit of romance in here as well, but it's just such a fun graphic novel, just following them on their journey as they make the most out of their last shift together and enjoy it, and you can sort of learn how their friendship has grown throughout just this job, because they don't really talk to each other outside of the job. It's just like they just fall into step as soon as they start for the season, and it's a really lovely story. Then we've got a witchy one here. So this is The Familiars by Stacey Halls. So I have spoken about this a little bit, and I find that if you know in advance what to kind of expect, it might not feel a bit bad, but I know that some people did really like this, and I did like it, but I just felt like it was missold a little bit. So going into this, I thought it was going to be really heavy on the witch kind of vibes. It does definitely feature witches, and it is kind of like the main embodiment of it, but it's not direct like witch magic. They're not doing it. It's more about the folklore and accusations, and it's also kind of simmering as the carrying plot, but there's other things layered on top that is taking more prominence, I guess. So we're following Fleetwood, does she have a name? Fleetwood Shuttleworth. She's been married for a while and she's yet to produce a child. She suffers with miscarriages, unfortunately, and she's basically worried now. She kind of gets into her head that if she doesn't produce this child now safely and satisfactorily, her husband is gonna look elsewhere and kind of get an unbarren wife. And she meets this girl one day who basically, I think she claims that she can help her with this birth. And yeah, it's tied with tensions of witch accusations, and you know, there's obviously that tension of her becoming pregnant and seeing what becomes of that as her health diminishes or whatever. But yeah, so if you go in knowing that witchcraft isn't at the very forefront, it's mainly Fleetwood and her relationship with this girl Alice, who said that she can help her, and it's more in terms of like the lore and folklore in that sense rather than active witchcraft, if you know what I mean, then I think you can enjoy this. Because looking back on this now, it was a decent read, boring at some points, but the atmosphere was perfect. I did enjoy it. I just felt let down that it didn't have the obvious witchcraft that I felt was sold to me. I have since bought her next book, which is called The Foundling. I think it goes by a different name and title in America, and I'm kind of going in there with different expectations to hopefully skewer any disappointment, but I would recommend this. It has those perfect autumnal kind of atmospheric vibes for sure. Then we've got a classic here. We have got Emily the Strange. I was obsessed with this character growing up. I used to just do random doodles of her. I don't even know how to describe her. She's just yeah, I'll just read here. Emily the Strange is the world's weirdest 13-year-old, and her curiosity and confidence bleed through every page of this mammoth collection of all things strange. She's been lost, dark and bored. She's been ready to rock, breaking the fake out for revenge and happily alone. She's learned the secrets of her lineage and fate in the 13th hour. Encounter her razor-sharp wit, her posse of moody black cats, and her beverage of famous friends to experience the pop culture phenomenon for yourself. This collects the first 3 volumes in hardcover, and I really should continue this because this is so much fun. I think I've done a full review for this as well. So you've got some colour spreads, but it's featuring like deep red hues, mainly black and white, but with sparks of like purples and reds throughout, and it's just so much fun. As I say, she's just like this figure character that I've loved since I was young, and I've got like, oh, she's tucked away because I think my cat kept batting her down, but I've got like a little figurine doll of her on my bookshelves. But yeah, she's really cool, and it's just a fun spooky kind of goth vibe for October. Next up we have another fun one. This is Neil Gaiman's Coraline, and I've got the graphic novel here to hold up. This is such a creepy story. I feel like quite a few people know this from the Tim Burton production of Coraline, but we follow a girl called Coraline, how many times I'm going to say her name, who her family move home, and she's very bored and she's lonely and she just wants to do something entertaining, but obviously she doesn't know anyone in the area yet, and they're still going through the mundane activities of unpacking their bags and sort of just looking through the home and stuff. She stumbles across this strange door, and this door is a portal that takes her to a world that is very similar yet different from her own. Straight away it's sinister, but to her it's new, it's different, it's exciting, it's taken her out of her boring life, and the plot ensues. It's very creepy. If you have a fear of buttons, I would warn you perhaps against reading this, or this edition. If you can cope with button descriptions perhaps, which isn't, I don't think it's a lot in here, then maybe read the actual book as opposed to watching the film and flicking through the graphic novel, because you'll see buttons a lot. But it is a really creepy, it's aimed at like a younger audience, but it's creepy, it's sinister, and it is amazing. I absolutely love this story. Next up we have the whole Winter Night Trilogy by Catherine Arden. I've only got the second book here to show you just because I would have held the first book up, but I don't own it physically. The first book is The Bear and the Nightingale, then we have The Winter of the Witch, and then we have, what is the other one? The Girl in the Tower. And this is inspired by Russian folklore and mythology. We're following Vazha, a young lady who, you can tell she has some witchy vibes about her. She's very in tune, kind of like Lanny, with the forest that she kind of grew up around, and like the spirits, and the place that she grew up is very respectful of the old demons and stuff that sort of replenish the hearth, that sort of, you know, make the home livable, save, you know, all these different things that protect them, and even the more malevolent ones, they kind of do things to avoid their wrath. But you can learn that things are changing. Her father is needing to remarry because her mother passed away, and he just needs to kind of remake the family home, make it more of a secure environment and such. And you can tell early on that Christianity is coming through, and it's changing a lot, so they're almost sort of banishing these heathen beliefs. But Vazha is clearly very in tune to this kind of world, and she also is fighting against the restraints of being a typical woman in this kind of medieval Russia inspired tale. So she's trying to be who she needs to be, basically, and escape that. And it's just about her adventure throughout these whole 3 books, and it's amazing. Some awesome things are done. It's heart-wrenching. There's some romance as well. It's just got familiar love as well with her relationship with some of her brothers and her sister, and it's all these things get so complex as the story gets on, and you see the characters getting older and drifting further apart in terms of where they're living, and having to marry in terms of different ties to kind of make family politics work and stuff. And it's amazing, so fantastic, one of my favourite trilogies. I'd highly recommend this. Then we've got Victoria Schwab's City of Ghosts. I really do need to continue on with this. I don't know if there's a couple of out now, but I know it at least has the second story out. And this is about a girl called Cass, who her parents are like ghost story reality TV shows. They go to old places, or I think they're authors, sorry, about old ghost hauntings and architecture and stuff, and they've just started a TV show kind of around the same vibe, and they go to Edinburgh in Scotland to visit one of the haunted areas. And the ironic and funny thing is that Cass actually can see ghosts, even though her parents sort of just milk their experiences for TV. Cass can actually see ghosts, and yeah, it just follows the adventure there. She's got a best friend who's a ghost, who you kind of see their relationship throughout this book, and I really do need to get the second one because I enjoyed the writing in this, I enjoyed the story, and I'd be interested to see where it goes. And again, I think I've got a reading vlog on this one that I did last year or a couple of years ago that I will link if you're interested in. Then we've got The Price Guide to the Occult by Leslie Walton, and I keep meaning to check out the other book that they wrote. This is The Strange and Beautiful Stories of Ava Lavender that I know quite a few people enjoyed. But this one, I didn't really know what to expect. I kind of got it as a cover buy like last year, and I really enjoyed it. So it says here, all Noel Blackburn wants is to live an unremarkable teenage life, but as a descendant of the witch Rona Blackburn, who famously cursed her family over a century ago, Noel is no stranger to suffering. She has reason to hope, however, that she may have escaped the thorniest side effects of Rona's curse. Then a mysterious book comes out, promising to cast any spell for the right price. The author, Noel's own mother, is performing magic that should be far beyond her capabilities, and such magic always requires a sacrifice. The storm is coming, it's coming for Noel. So it's also a little bit of like you see the tension because Noel doesn't have any contact with her mother, and there's the strain there and kind of learning what happened to cause this, but there's also the magic underneath in her coming more into her powers and understanding like what can be done, what can't be done, and like friendships and relationships there. And it was really, really good. I'd recommend it. I did realise that I forgot that I have some ebooks or books that I have on ebooks, so I'll quickly go through there just to read out some of those. First of all, I'd recommend some of the Tor short stories. I read a couple of those since I caught up. Well, I don't think I'm caught up now because I think the next book has come out, but with the Wayward Children series by Sean Maguire, I really was craving some more publication from Tor just to see if I enjoyed them generally as a publication, and I have. So I'd recommend some of their short stories on there. A lot of them are horror, weird fiction, sci-fi, so check out those. They're all free to read on the website, and you might find some new favourite authors as well. I've got Mrs. Death by Selena Godden. I feel like that's how you pronounce her first name, I can't remember. She's awesome as an author and as a person. I've communicated her a few times on posts via Instagram, and she messages back. She's just so lovely. Anyway, Mrs. Death comes out, or came out this year, and I got it as a NetGalley e-arc, which I was so happy about because I ended up absolutely loving it. And it's a weird one to try and explain because we're basically following this character called Wolf, and he is documenting the whole existence of death. And in this story, death is personified as the most unseen kind of person in this world, and that is an old black woman. And so he has had very strong and early encounters with death, and I feel like he's kind of got this connection to her that nobody else has. So she comes to him and tells him of life and death, and all that combines, and just humanity and how things have changed. And it is such an interesting book. It's so strange. It made me think deeply about stuff revolving around like grief and death and all these sort of things, but it was such an enjoyable read as well, which is such a weird thing to say because it sounds really dark. Honestly, try it out. It's a bit of a weird kind of story, but I think if you have those sort of tastes, you'd really enjoy it. Okay, back to some more physical books. I have here The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Reddin by Alexandra Bracken, and I really mean to keep getting the second one of this, which is more about well, it's about another character in here, but this one I didn't know what I was expecting, and I really enjoyed it as well. And this one says here, Prosper Reddin always thought he was the only unexceptional Reddin in his annoyingly remarkable family. As he's about to find out though, the truth is much more dangerous. Because the Reddin family luck is down to a pact Prosper's great something grandfather made with a demon, a pact that he broke. And guess what? Demons aren't big fans of forgiveness. They prefer revenge. So it's a lot of like dark witchcraft in that way, mainly focusing on demons and possession and stuff like that. But I think it's a YA, so it's not like scary in that sense because it is targeted at a somewhat younger audience, but it's so funny. It's got those Halloween-y vibes, obviously, with the demon possession stuff. It's got the atmosphere. It's got tensions again within family, which is interesting. I'm liking that they're bringing these kind of like real life issues into YA literature, and making it accessible to see, like, because not everybody comes from a perfect family, so it's nice to see that sort of representation in there. And yeah, it's just super enjoyable, really fun read. I'd recommend that. And we've got a middle grade here. This is the Pinch of Magic by Michelle Harrison, and it has a sequel called A Sprinkle of Sorcery. And this one is so much fun. It is about witches, and I guess you'd call them witches, yeah. They are about 3 sisters, so again, you've got a nicer kind of family relationship there, showing like sisterly relationship, and that's really nice. This first book features a prison break as well, and it's about these 3 sisters, how as they kind of uncover the truth about their almost forced to stay on this island. One of them, Betty, has from day one always wanted to be an adventurer, but she hears time and time again about her granny saying that they can't really leave the island, and they decide to discover why this is, and to almost break that curse, so to speak, about why they can't leave the island. And you learn more about that and the backstory to it, and it's amazing. It's so much fun. It's adventure packed. It's got funny moments, some sadder heartfelt moments, and yeah, it's just an all-round knockout. I really enjoy this one and would definitely recommend it. Then we have some classics that I'd like to talk about. So getting into these bits now, I haven't read all of them, but I know like they might be your more stereotypical choices for this time of year, so feel free to skip this if you want to. But we are kicking it off with a book that I have put somewhere and cannot find. Oh, they're over here. I've got them. It's okay, I've got them. Frankenstein. So this and another book I'm about to show you in a bit are ex-library copies, so I do apologise for the glare. But yeah, we've got Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which a lot of you guys will know is one of the like OG classic gothic horror literatures, following the creation of this creature by Dr. Frankenstein, and how this monster then runs off and starts causing destruction and stuff. And I think it's told through letters as well. I swear there's letters storytelling. It's been a while since I read this one, but this one's got like some illustrations and stuff, so it's really fun. And yeah, it's a really cool classic, really enjoyable. It birthed quite a lot, well, it's one of the stories that birthed quite a lot of like monster gothic stories. And it kind of warns you about the dangers of playing too far into science and technology and almost trying to become God in that way, and the limits of the human mind and what you should and shouldn't do, like morally. So it has some interesting aspects to think about deeply in that as well, but this is a great one. Then we've got The Day of the Trithids, which is, I believe, one that I read this year at some point. This is a nice Penguin classic edition. I don't know what they call these editions, like with these nice covers. Does it have? No, I don't think it has the actual edition, but they're really lovely. The design is created by Brian Cronin, and this one is really weird. It's kind of like almost sci-fi dystopian, I would say, and horror as well. So it's our world, but you kind of see how it builds up. There's this new kind of plant seed that's going around, and they grow into these things they call the Trithids, and these Trithids are very intelligent, and they start sort of taking over the world really in like a post-apocalyptic situation as well, because they're able to kill humans. They're they're carnivorous. I don't know why I struggle to say that. And yeah, it's a hell of a ride. It says, when a freak cosmic event renders most of Earth's population blind, Bill Mason is one of the lucky few to retain his sight. The London he walks is crammed with groups of men and women needing help, some ready to prey on those who can still see. But another menace stalks blind and sighted alike. With nobody to stop their spread, the Trithids, mobile plants with lethal stingers and carnivorous appetites, seem set to wipe out the survivors. It's scary, but it is super good. Then we've got some Poe. So these editions, by the way, the ones that I said are like the library editions, are called the Steampunk this, Steampunk that. So this is Steampunk Poe, illustrated by Zdenko Basic and Manuel Simbarek. So yeah, this is another really funky illustrated one. Oh, that I nearly dropped some there. And this just collects some of Poe's short stories, you know. So Edgar Allan Poe was like a short story horror writer, so to speak, and some of these I've already read because I ended up, I think, I can't remember if it was before or after this, I read a massive bind up that I got from the library, and I've got reviews on those if you're interested. I don't think I ever finished reviewing them though. But it's got books, it's got stories like The Mask of the Red Death, The Raven, To Helen, The Bells, The System of Dr. Tar, Professor Feather. So yeah, it's got some of his poems, sorry, I was incorrect, some of his poems and some of his short stories. Just a selection of a few, and it's a nice way to sample some of his works as well in a more like easily digestible, because it's like big font and illustrations, and you know, makes it nicer to go through. So yeah, definitely recommend that. Got the Brothers Grimm. Now I've got two Brothers Grimm's collections because I didn't realise I already owned a copy when I got another copy like years ago, but they're both beautiful editions. And this one says it's the complete first edition, so I assume there's a second collection in this same style. The original folk and fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm, translated and edited by Zach Zipes, illustrated by Andrea De Zezo. And this again is another bind up. I got this in foils, I think. My other editions from Waterstones, I think. It's just another bind up of their short stories and yeah, all their creepy like folk stories and tales, and there's absolutely loads in here. Let's see. Oh my god, there's so many. So this is going to be it's almost got slightly deckled edges, but not quite. This is going to be a story, a book, sorry, that when I do eventually start, it'll be just like a couple of like stories here and there. It'll probably take me ages to read, but definitely anything Brothers Grimm related, highly recommend. Next up, one I haven't read, but Wuthering Heights I hear is great for this kind of vibe, this creepy, spooky atmosphere. I believe it follows, so this is by Emily Bronte, and I believe it follows, what's the girl's name? I remember Heathcliff because I'm like, Heathcliff, it's me, Kathy, I've come home. Yeah, anyway, I think they have some sort of relationship. I don't know if they get married or whatever, or they're just sort of courting, and she does something very deceitful, and it leaves Heathcliff kind of tormenting her and then their children as time goes on. So yeah, it's just, I don't know if one of them dies or what, but it's supposed to be pretty creepy. I'm trying to find out. This is an absolutely stunning edition though, really gorgeous. I'm trying to find the actual synopsis. It's also got deckled edges, which I love, but it doesn't actually have a synopsis. So just quickly, let me give you an accurate synopsis because I probably have butchered that completely. It's funny that the first two books that pop up when you type in Wuthering are Wuthering Heights, but it doesn't give you an actual synopsis. Okay, here we go. Nope, that's still not the synopsis. It's just about the Bronte sisters. If I cut down a little bit, I see it. So, in Wuthering Heights, the foundling boy Heathcliff devotes himself to their young daughter Catherine. Growing up together, the two share a love that blossoms into romance until Catherine's hurtful betrayal. Embittered as an adult, Heathcliff vents his rage on his and Catherine's heirs, manipulating their lives under the influence of a passion that has curdled into obsession. Oh, so I don't think they have children together. I think they have separate children, but he manipulates them throughout their life, maybe. I feel like I've seen an adaptation of this, like through the BBC or something, but that was years ago. But although I know it's just another kind of weird, almost gothic retelling, seems to be focusing on an obsession of love turned into rage and betrayal. Okay, and then we have Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is another new to my collection edition. It was lovely gifted to me. This is the Penguin English Library edition. It's really nice. I purchased Dracula, what's it called? Dracula a couple of years ago, and I realised, oh, maybe I should read this first, even though I think technically Dracula is a prequel, but I think it goes on the assumption that most of you have read the original, you know what I mean? So I'll probably read this first. And this one is a chilling masterpiece of the horror genre. Dracula illuminates the dark corners of Victorian sexuality. When Jonathan Harker visits Transylvania to advise Count Dracula on a London home, he makes a horrifying discovery. Soon afterwards, a number of disturbing incidents unfold in England. An unmanned ship is wrecked at Whitby, strange puncture marks appear on a young woman's neck, and the inmate of a lunatic asylum raves about the arrival of his master, while a determined group of adversaries prepares to face the terrifying Count. There's been numerous adaptations, so I've seen at least a few, but this is another great spooky one. My battery's flashing, oh no. And the other one that I wanted to briefly talk about is one that I haven't read, but it is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, which I'll give a quick little synopsis for. It's really flashing. It's the gothic morality tale of the story of a man who, taken by his own beauty, pledges his soul in a desperate bid for eternal youth. But when his wish is granted, things go terribly wrong. A painting of Dorian begins to age in his place, where Dorian himself becomes a dangerous narcissist who destroys everyone standing in his way, until the day he is forced to come face to face with the ugliness of his own conscience. So those are all my picks for books that I'd recommend to you. As I said, some I haven't read yet, but only a few. I think most of these that I've recommended to you are ones that I've read and enjoyed, or would feel fit, or I would feel fits perfect for this time of year. Do let me know your suggestions and recommendations. I'm going to include a little pan over of my library behind me in case you spot any books that might fit this but I didn't have a chance to talk about today. And I'll speak to you in another video soon. Bye.
Waste another day, eyes on my display. You say we need a change and I feel that you mean it. You mean it. But you're so right, we're losing track of time, buying things online and it's not like we need them. We don't need them. So can we just slow